Dear learner, welcome to our continuing lessons in Human Resource Management subject on the Manifested Learners Publishing platform. And today we are dealing with the separation strategy. Separation strategy deals with the exit point at which an employee leaves an organization. And in this lesson, we are going to introduce the separation strategy and look at the various topics there. So in our lesson today, dear learner, which is separation strategy as we have indicated in the human resource management subject, we are going to look at the forms of employee separation. And under the forms of employee separation, we are going to look at redundancies. We are going to look at dismissal stroke discharge. We are going to look at retirement. We are going to look at resignation as some of the forms of employee separation. Then we will also be able to look at the separation process. We will also look at termination benefits. We will be able to look at outplacement. Proceed on to look at legal provisions on employee separation. We will also have a chance to look at exit interviews. And ultimately, we will be able to look at effects of employee separation. So in our lesson today, we are going to start with looking at what is meant by separation strategy, and then we move on to look at the forms of employee separation. So in the context of human resource management, dear learner, separation strategy is contextualized within the separation of employees in an organization. And separation is a situation where the service agreement of an employee with his or her employer comes to an end. So there is the employer, there is the employee, and there is an agreement of service. So when this agreement of an service agreement of an employee with his or her employer comes to an end, that is what we are looking at in terms of separation. And when that happens, then the employee leaves an organization. So this is a process which you are going to be involved in, and that's why it is important we look at it. We look at the knowledge, we look at the skills required to be able to effectively manage separation in an organization. So in a nutshell, we are saying separation is a situation where the service agreement of an employee with his or her employer comes to an end and the employee leaves an organization. So that is what is meant by separation. So in our lesson today, we want to look at the forms of employee separation, forms of employee separation, forms of employee separation. And under the forms of employee separation, there are several. So we are going to start with redundancies. So we want to see what is a redundancy. And in case there are many, then they are referred to as redundancies. Redundancies. So what is meant by redundancy? From the meaning of the word redundant means surplus. And a redundancy occurs when the services of an employee are no longer required. Okay? So a redundancy is a situation where the services of an employee are no longer needed by an employer. So a redundancy is a situation where the services of an employee are no longer needed by an employer. So what it simply means, the services have become surplus, or there is less work within that particular work environment. So that is the situation that is referred to as a redundancy. So if it is one, then it is a redundancy. If there are many, then they are redundancies. So what are some of the reasons? Reasons for redundancies. Reasons for redundancies. What are some of the reasons that may make an organization declare workers redundant? So one, closure of a business. Closure of a business. If an organization has been operating as a perpetual organization and it has been running several business, say, branches, or maybe several business lines. So if one line of business, for instance, when COVID struck some employers who used to travel, for example, at night, and there was a curfew. So a curfew has been imposed, and you have employees being engaged at night, so that business is no longer there. So once that business is closed, then those workers may be declared redundant because there is no longer work for them to be able to do. So closure of a business could be one of the reasons why workers may be declared redundant. Then less work for employees. Less work for employees. An organization may be having a workload that requires, for example, say 30 workers. So if the workload now requires 20 employees, then there'll be a surplus of, say, 10 workers. So those 10 workers will be redundant or surplus. So when there is less work for employees, then that could also be another cause for an employer to declare employees redundant within a given working environment. So change in work location, change in work location, change in work location. So an employee has been operating in Kenya, employer has been operating in Kenya and has now relocated the business maybe to, say, Uganda and so on. So if this employer has now relocated to Uganda, then change of location, the workers who are in Nairobi, if they don't, say, go to Kampala, then those workers could be declared redundant due to a change of location from one location, which is, for example, Nairobi, to Kampala. Then what happens is that change of technology, change of technology. For example, an organization has been using what is called labor extensive approach. Then it required, say, 3,000 workers. Then it has enhanced the level of technology, and now the organization can only require 1,000 employees. So that then means 2,000 workers will be declared redundant due to the changes that have occurred in terms of technology. So that particular situation ensures that these extra workers may have to be offloaded. Then reorganization. Reorganization of an entity. Reorganization of an entity. So what this means, an organization could have, for example, been having, say, 3 sections. And then they decide now to bring the sections together so that they only have 2. So one section will be extra. So the workers who are in the other sections may no longer, for example, be needed. If you needed, for example, 3 heads of section, you may just now need maybe 2. So this kind of reorganization can also be one of the reasons why an organization may declare workers redundant. So these are some of the reasons why an organization may find it necessary to declare workers redundant. So reasons for redundancies. So we have had a look at, we are looking at the forms of employee separation. We have looked at redundancies, and now we can have a look at dismissals, or what you are calling here discharge. Dismissals stroke discharge. Dismissals stroke discharge. So separation, dear learner, can also occur through a dismissal process, and a dismissal process is normally initiated by the employer. When an employee is said to be dismissed, this is the termination of the services of an employee as a punitive measure. This is separation or termination of an employee's service or employment by employer as a punitive measure. So what this implies is that this separation or termination of an employee from the services or employment is orchestrated by the employer, and it is as a result of an employee not having done something as expected. So some kind of a punishment. That's why we are saying it's a punitive measure. So what are some of the reasons for employee dismissal or discharge? Reasons for employee dismissal or discharge. What could be some of the reasons in a work environment that can make an employer dismiss an employee? There are several reasons. So one, attendance problem. Attendance problems. An employee is expected, for example, to come to the workplace at, say, 8 in the morning. And this employee, on a continuous basis, comes to the workplace maybe, let's say, at 11 a.m. And despite efforts, the employee does not improve. So this could lead to a dismissal of that kind of an employee. And then two, insubordination. Insubordination. And dear learner, insubordination is taken as a very serious disciplinary area where an employee could actually be subjected to what is called summary dismissal. This could lead to summary dismissal where an employee is given instructions by a superior and the employee willfully disobeys those kind of instructions. That could lead to summary dismissal. Then there is the element of three, dishonesty. Dishonesty on the part of an employee. So if the employee is dishonest, that kind of an employee could also be subjected to a dismissal by an employer. And then number four, fraud, participation in fraudulent activities. That could also lead to dismissal. Number five, willful damage of employers' property. So that again could lead to dismissal from an organization. An employee is given an equipment or a resource, and that employee damages that resource willfully, then that one could lead to dismissal. Six, criminal activities. If an employee engages in criminal acts or criminal activities, that kind of an employee could also be dismissed from an organization. Then fighting other employees. Fighting other employees. So where an employee engages in fist fights, for example, fights other employees and is found to be guilty of that, that could also be a reason for dismissal. Then damage to machines or equipment. Damage to machine or equipment, that again could lead to an employee being dismissed from a work environment and so on. Misconduct. Number 10, drug and substance abuse. Drug and substance abuse. 11, failure to use personal protective equipment, PPEs, provided by employer. An employee could be given, say, personal protective equipment to be able to protect them from injury, and they fail to use them. Drug abuse and substance abuse could also be some of the reasons why an employee could be dismissed. Then there is also the issue of inability to work. An employee is principally assigned duties to be able to work, and where an employee is not able to work, then that employee could be dismissed from the work that that particular employer has designated that employee to do. So in our lesson today, we have looked at separation. We have looked at the forms of employee separation. And in the forms of employee separation, in our lesson today, we have looked at redundancies. We have looked at reasons for redundancies. We have looked at dismissals and discharge. And we can very quickly, dear learner, run through what we have looked at today to be able to confirm that we have got it right. So we have said separation strategy. Separation is a situation where the service agreement of an employee with his or her employer comes to an end and the employee leaves an organization. So in the context of that, then a strategy of carrying out separation in an organization could be formulated. And once that is formulated, then there are various forms of employee separation where we have said we have redundancies. And a redundancy is a situation where the services of an employee are no longer needed by an employer. So those services are considered to be surplus. And some of the reasons for redundancies may include 1, closure of a business, 2, less work for employees. Like you might have been having 30 employees, you only now need 20, so 10 could be declared redundant. Then 3, change in work location. Then 4, change of technology. And then 5, reorganization or restructuring of an entity. Those could be some of the reasons why employees could be declared redundant in a given working environment. Then we have gone further and had a look at dismissals, and maybe they are also called discharge. And we have indicated that separation or termination of an employee service by an employer as a punitive measure could be referred to as a dismissal or a discharge. Now, what are some of the reasons for employee dismissal or employee discharge? These reasons may include, number 1, attendance problems. Number 2, insubordination. Number 3, dishonesty. Number 4, fraud. Number 5, willful damage of employer's property. Number 6, criminal activities. Number 7, fighting other employees. Number 8, damage to machines or equipment. Number 9, misconduct. Number 10, drug and substance abuse. Number 11, failure to use personal protective clothing, or what are called PPEs. And number 12, inability to work. So up to that level, dear learner, you need to have an assignment. And your assignment for today's lesson, discuss the reasons that may make an organization to declare employees redundant. So dear learner, your assignment for the lesson today, discuss the reasons that may make an organization to declare employees redundant. So you go through what we have done today, which was our introduction to separation strategy, and we have looked at the forms of employee separation, and today we have looked at redundancies and redundancies as one of the forms of separation. Then we have also looked at dismissals, or what are called discharge. And in our continuing lesson, dear learner, we are going to look at retirement and resignation as part of the process of employee separation. So thank you very much.